Hi y'all. I like my hair right now. I know it's a bit of a scarecrow look, but I'm gonna go with it. Um, I've been thinking about this just before I clicked record. The other thing I want to say before we get into the heart and the meat of this reading is that I know that I'm probably on your shiz list because I did not do a video on the Jupiter Neptune conjunction on April 12th, and then I did not do a video on today's full moon. And it's still today, so I could be doing a full moon video, but instead I'm going to cover the transits in Pisces because I think that is more important. And quite frankly, as far as I am concerned, these transits have a lot of influence on this full moon. The full moon in Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus is in Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, and both Jupiter and Neptune are in Pisces. So we have rulership and dispositors all in the sign of Pisces for this full moon. I don't know whether to say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that it's not the usual Saturn, Uranus, Venus thing that we've been dealing with so many lunations, but it is what it is. So whether you like me or not, or you hate me, I don't even know if I've lost subscribers over the past, week or so on this issue. But, those of you who know me and stick with me know that I do this for the love of doing it, and that offers its own cleanness as far as I'm concerned. So let me dive in. I know what the title of this video is, and you know what the title of this video is. But before we get into that, which will apply to a certain segment of the population, let me start with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, and let us talk about the positive manifestations of this. Because before we get to the darker or the lower vibrations of it, let's talk about the higher vibrations of it. The planet Neptune is associated with the non-material and the connection to the non-material, the spiritual, the numinous to some extent, the inspirational, the muses, the blue planet, the misty planet, the foggy planet, it loosens our bonds with those things that we would hold materially dear and materially important, those things that are important to building a resume, those things that are important to making us feel comfortable materially. It is sort of an anti-Saturn planet in that regard, insofar as it's much more about recognizing the essential truth of things, the essential connection between everything, the essential oneness, spirit. And once you connect to that, then of course you're forced to answer the question, what is all this running around about? And why don't I just give it up? And why don't I just focus on my connection with the divine, the source? Well, that is well and good. And in what it's higher, it's a highly spiritual planet, it's a highly renunciatory planet. And if you were thinking of joining a monastery, I would say that Neptune is your soul planet. If you were thinking of giving it all up and, kind of going the Sufi way, love, connectedness, non-attachment to the material. Very often with Neptune, it is associated with loss and the idea that you come with nothing and you go with nothing, so nothing and nobody is yours. And there's an essential truth to that. But so much of our lives are spent around building material things. I know that people's college results have just come out. Where are my kids going to go to college? And how am I going to pay for it? And, is this the right choice for them? And will they be comfortable materially? And, all those anti-Neptune thoughts that are important and that are relevant. Music, the arts, imagination, where does that inspiration come from? Where we see things in our mind's eye, the silver screen, so to speak, what the camera captures, these kind of shiny reflective ideas, these are all Neptunian mirages, projections. And of course, in the lower realm, when we're talking about Neptune, we're talking about murkiness and deceit and theft and smoke and mirrors and gaslighting, which I know I've covered before, and I'll get to that later. But those are the day-to-day agents that create loss for us because we're not conditioned to lose things or want to give things up, or want to give people up, or want to give situations up. Jupiter, on the other hand, has a reputation for, at least in Western astrology, expanding everything it touches. Now, I have a slightly different experience of Jupiter as I read charts, which is that for me, Jupiter, as I mentioned to you before, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, rather, the further out you get from planet Earth or the Sun, you're going to be getting further out from both those, essentially. The less agency and less control you have over how that planet's going to affect you. With Jupiter and Saturn, these are very much co-creating planets. With Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they're going to have an effect wherever it is that they are. And you are going to have to contend with them. When it comes to Jupiter, I find that more than any other planet, Jupiter really, our idea of God as the person we turn to, the person, the entity that knows us, the entity that has our best interests at heart, the entity that rescues us, the entity that aids us, the benevolent benefic. I find that Jupiter really does embody those qualities. And wherever Jupiter goes, whichever house it occupies or transits, it ends a 12 to 13 year cycle and starts a 12 to 13 year cycle with the knowledge of what is true for you and your soul, and it tries to provide that break. Often this means an ending and a new beginning, and it's the ending that I'm going to underline, because in order to create a new beginning, an auspicious new beginning, as a particular astrologer once coined this phrase with Jupiter, and I concur, that has been my experience too, but it also means often an ending, and the ending can be emphasized more. So if you have a planet of either artistic goals or inspiration or spirituality or renunciation or deceit, it could very well be that with this Jupiter conjunction on April the 12th, a new cycle has started. There's a renewal. There's an ending and a new beginning. A space has been created. A more blessed space, a more auspicious space, a space where certain things, especially if you're dealing with the lower aspects of Neptune, things have been made more visible so that you can determine how it is that you want to proceed with them and what the new rules of engagement are going to be. Okay? If we look at the more positive aspects of this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction on April the 12th, I'm going to talk about a few rising signs, just to give examples. I'm not going to cover all, just to give you examples of what this might occur like. If, for example, you are Cancer rising, then it could be, as you headed towards April the 12th, we're talking about an infusion, especially if you're a creative person, an infusion of kind of a new energy, and ending a 12-year cycle, a start of a 12-year cycle related to artistic goals or spiritual goals. Now, if you're Cancer rising, this is happening in your 9th house, then I would also say, if there's nebulous activity, look to the father. I know a lot of people place the father or males in the 10th house, and I kind of go the Hindu Vedic way on this, the Jyotish way of this, and I kind of find that paternal issues kind of sit in the 9th house and not the 10th. Just what I notice. Okay, don't come after me, people. This is the thing with astrology, there's so many schools and so many systems and so many house divisions. That's what I see. So there could be a certain amount of nebulousness related to relationship with the father. There could be a certain nebulousness related to goals. So the important thing, if you're dealing with other men, is to just make sure that you are not, as you go through this reset on April the 12th, you are still keeping an eye onto a certain level of factfulness, and you're not allowing yourself to get deluded. If you are a Gemini rising, and there's a reason why I'm starting with Gemini and Cancer rising first, because these are happening in 9th house for Cancer, 10th house for Gemini, and those houses could present less complicated scenarios than some of the other rising signs that I'm talking about. If you're a Gemini rising, again, it could be that it marks some sort of a new beginning related to an artistic career or a spiritual career. It can if you're Gemini rising and if you have been naughty, or if you have been deceptive, or if you have been gaslighty, it can start to create a certain amount of visibility around that. So just if you're Gemini rising, just be mindful that something might that there might be some exposure there. When planets, I find, are transiting the first, second, and to some extent third house, I find that we are the agent. And when planets are transiting the seventh and eighth houses, I find that other people are likely to be, that the planets represent other people. So if you are an Aquarius rising or a Pisces rising, don't come after me. It might be that it is your nebulousness and your deceptiveness that is under scrutiny. If you are a Leo rising or a Virgo rising, because these transits are going to affect your 7th and 8th houses, it could very well be that it is a partner or a marriage partner or a business partner or something to do with shared resources or legacies or inheritance. It could be that that is where there has been an element of deceptive. It's less likely if you're Leo, Virgo rising to have very much to do with creativity. It might have more to do with loss. If you are Aquarius or Pisces rising, then there's an element of possibility that that again, from a career perspective, especially as you headed towards April the 12th, you could have received some sort of infusion or an ending and a start of a 12-year cycle related to career, creative, or spiritual aspirations. You get the gist. Now, part of the reason why I wasn't rushing to do a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is because I knew that Venus came into Pisces on April the 5th and will be in Pisces for the rest of April, entering Aries on May the 2nd. Mars came into Pisces on April the 15th, yesterday. Quite frankly, that's really the transit I'm interested in. And Mars is going to be in Pisces till May 24th. And let me break down these transits for you, really. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that the sign of Pisces has seen a certain amount of murky activity and a need to release and arguably some loss since 2014, 15, 16. And a lot of people felt the energy in 2016, but 15, 16. Eclipses of release with Chiron in Pisces at that time and Neptune in Pisces. Okay. Since then, we've had Mercury retrogrades in Pisces between February and April for a series of years after that, just to keep those topics fresh. Neptune, of course, has continued to be in Pisces. And then this year, briefly last year, and then this year again, we're seeing this infusion of Jupiterian energy into Pisces with personal planets transiting Pisces right now, like Venus and Mars. Jupiter will be back in Pisces in November, December of this year. And then Saturn comes into Pisces in March 2023 to set up shop for its usual 2.5-year journey through Pisces. So the sign of Pisces and where it sits in our chart and what it stands for has been taking a bit of a battering, and it is probably one of the most sensitive areas of our chart. If you are a Virgo rising, I'm talking about the Western zodiac. Do not get into an argument with me if you're Virgo rising, if you're Leo rising or Virgo rising, because especially people who are familiar with Jyotish everyone wants to be a Leo ascendant for some reason. So from a Western perspective, if you're Virgo rising, you just have to look at your marriage and partnerships during that time. What has been going on? Where do things stand? I think about it, and I don't even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole right now, unless I was actually talking to someone who's a Virgo rising. But, here we are. And because we've got this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in your 7th house, there could almost be a feeling of, while Jupiter and Saturn were in your 5th house a few years ago, you could have been the naughty one, romantically, if you were in a partnership. But it may be that by now you're discovering that your partner was not been entirely clean either. Now, that's a very specific thing to say, but I'll stand by it. Now, here's the good news. With the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, if you have been dealing with murky business, as you headed towards April the 12th, you can't ignore this conjunction, and you can't ignore Jupiter coming in and giving you a lucky break. It's not going to make the nebulous behavior go away, but it is going to change its nature. It's like a, I'm thinking about it, this gets kind of like a lever. It's like a shovel, it's like it shovels out an old type of energy, and in doing that, it creates space for a new kind of energy. There's something here to finally contend with. And here's the deal. With Venus in this part of the chart from April the 5th to the end of April, there's an indication that there's something here worth protecting and worth fighting for. There's something of value here that people may be eyeing. There's an opportunity here. If, for example, you're Cancer rising or Gemini rising, there is an artistic opportunity, very possibly during the month of April that is starting to manifest or come together. There, it could be. There's room for bridge building. There's room for diplomacy. There's room for. There's an opportunity to smooth things over. But at the same time, with Mars' presence here since yesterday, it's the Mars and Pisces transit that I am pointing to. There are two battles left in this part of the chart. There's a small battle between yesterday and May the 24th with Mars here. And then there's a bigger battle in 2023, 2024, and part of 2025 when Saturn comes into Pisces. And some of the boundaries you're being encouraged to set in the Aquarius part of your chart, for some people, not everyone, is really being done so that you can come into the Pisces battle better prepared and better armed. So some of the boundaries that you're being asked to put in place this year are really to help prepare you for what 23, 24, 25 might bring. I know, as always in my readings, there's a lot sort of condensed there. So by all means, go back to it and kind of break it down and parse it down and listen to it. I'm playing with my hair again. All right. Two things. The biggest challenge with Neptune in its low form is the gaslighting. If you try and see clarity, because Neptune, smoke and mirrors. If you try and see clarity, the people who you are concerned about or suspicious of or who may be guilty are likely going to use gaslighting techniques, which are, you're accusing me? You're crazy. Something's not right. I don't think you're doing so well. Are you okay? I'm so concerned about you. It's a deflection. Rather than there be any further examination of whatever it is that someone is accusing them of, they will go into public humiliation. Have you seen, this person came out of the woodwork to accuse me and I'm so concerned about them. And, and often, have you seen the movie Gaslight? It's worth a watch, or it was a play originally. It's often done by people who typically other people can't imagine would gaslight. So whose public persona is very clean and very charming and rather good-natured and seemingly good. But what happens is that when they get in contact with some situation that they can take advantage of, often out of necessity, right? But it's a necessity that is masked. Other people can't even see that that necessity exists. Then they start I'll call it stealing, the theft from the victim. And when the victim starts to point to it, they go with I don't know what you're talking about. You sound crazy to me. This person sounds crazy. I'm so concerned. Can we get them checked out? Do we need to show them to a psychiatrist? The accusation of mental illness, right? That is at the heart of gaslighting. My accuser is crazy. Do you know? Blah, 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 blah. And that is presented often to people who have enough distance from the accuser and the accused to not be able to tap into the truth because they don't know what's going on with the parties involved. But they would also be really likely to believe the accused. Now, people who are trying to raise awareness on things like sexual abuse, etc., deal with chronic gaslighting, right? Oh my God, she's hysterical. Oh my God, she's highly strung. Oh my God, she must be under so much pressure. Oh my God, do you know the realities of her life? I'm going to use her because I would suspect that it happens to hers more often than it happens to him, although it does happen to him as well, in fairness. But I'm going with that kind of example. It also kind of ties into a little bit the movie and the play. So whatever your gender, if you have been dealing with a certain amount of murkiness in the Pisces part of your chart, and if with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction on April the 12th, you're feeling like it's like the tree has been split by this kind of Jupiterian, I'm going to end this and create a new beginning. Well, you're not necessarily dealing with people in situations that are just going to say, oh yeah, sorry, that was my mistake. Oh yeah, here, put me in handcuffs. You're likely going to deal with people who, at least till May the 24th, Mars's presence in Pisces is about a fight, an energy going into this part of the chart now that Jupiter has come in and split the bark. Okay? And this full moon that we've just had points to that. I'm going to leave it at this because I'm going to do a full moon in Libra video tomorrow. I'm going to expand on it then. And sorry, I don't like to do videos for longer than 20 minutes. And I'm going to leave you on this cliffhanger. Like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the bell icon to be notified whenever I do new videos. And I will see you tomorrow. Really. Bye.